Hello, everybody. Andy Jacob here with the .com magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series, and I have a great show today. You know, you watch the show all the time, and we love talking with people who I call change makers. I mean, these are people that really change the world. These are people that dive in. They've got a certain set of skills, a certain background, a certain experience that join organizations and make those organizations even stronger. They're change makers. And in this particular case, I've been able to, of course, invite Mr. Franklyn Baker on the show today. And Franklyn is the CEO and president of the United Way of Central Maryland. Now, you've probably heard of United Way, but we're very excited to have Franklyn on the show today because what they're doing in the Central Maryland area is very interesting. They're really leading a charge to change what's happening in that community. And Franklyn and his team, who, by the way, are remarkable. I've had a chance to talk to the team, email the team, text the team. They're fantastic. He's put together a great team over there as well. The board of directors are like a who's who in the neighborhood. I mean, it's fantastic. So I wanted to thank so much Franklyn coming on the show today. Franklyn, welcome to the .com magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series today.
Thank you, Andy. Looking forward to the conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's great to have you. We had a pre-interview. I was so excited what you're doing at the United Way of Central Maryland. And of course, the United Ways all over the country are doing fantastic work. But we're going to focus in on what you're doing at Central Maryland right now. And we're going to talk about entrepreneurship. But before we get started with all the programs that you have going, and you have a number of new programs as well, let's pull the lens back. Let's bring it back to 30,000 feet. Tell us about the United Way. Tell us about the United Way of Central Maryland, and then we're going to go.
Sure. So United Way as a global organization started back in the late 1800s. They're an incredible organization focused in on how do we do the best for the community. Right now, Andy, as you may know, there are just short of 1,100 United Ways, local United Ways operated locally across the country as well as the world. 37 countries, about $5.5 billion in collective revenue, impacting so many lives across so many different spheres. So United Way of Central Maryland has served the greater Baltimore region for nearly 100 years. In fact, as you may know, Andy, and your listeners will appreciate this, we're next year celebrating 100 years. Started in this market in 1925, and we will next year, 2025, be 100 years. So all of our work, it really does help drive equity, access, and opportunity. And so I think a real distinctive element about what we do, as you probably know as well, Andy, is we work directly with, not for people in the communities we serve. That's so important for us as a conglomerate. We really want to make sure that we're really providing programs and resources and services and support to really help strengthen lives, but also the neighborhoods that they live in. So our work is based really, and I'm so proud of this, on robust but localized reports and also data, right? Both our own data, but also the data of other organizations, so that we can really identify and track some of the ongoing needs. We do our best to reasonably predict emerging needs. And also this whole space, which I really believe is so important for us, this whole space of trying to understand how do we really evaluate and critically measure our success. That's such a huge deal for us, right? So I'm just so proud of the work we're doing here, and I'm grateful for this conversation to share it.
Yeah, I'm grateful as well. I mean, you don't look like you could have 30 years of expertise in nonprofit organizations, but you've been around. You've done some great work throughout your career. Of course, you started with the United Way of Central Maryland in 2016. And the organization, since you started, really has experienced what I call measurable shifts in culture by really championing, say that 3 times real quick, a lot of great things. And one thing that caught our eye is you get into the community. You and your team believe in like working side by side with people. It's not like you have an organization and people are working sort of beneath you or under you, or you sort of dictate what's happening. You like getting into the trenches. You and your team like working side by side, helping the people. Where does that come from? Where does that sort of side by side analysis, that side by side passion come from, Franklyn?
Yeah, I think what really drives us, Andy, is we're in this mode where we're providing what's needed where it's needed, but also when it's needed. And during my tenure, United Way has responded to community crises, expanded its programs to just really help people on the path to economic mobility and stability. We spearheaded new educational equity initiatives. We've launched 2 new family support centers that are providing free or reduced cost childcare and early childhood education, and so much more. We have 34 programs, soon to be 37 programs in operation. We have seen tremendous growth in revenue, sort of 3x and 4x in the past 7, 8 years. Number of people served has grown dramatically. Innovative programs developed and launched and incubated. Volunteers engaged across the panoply of our corporate partners. And so I think one of the things that we really see at our United Way is we are a uniter, right, Andy? We are a collaborative partner. We are an entity that shares resources and networks. And so we really do believe that it's our job to help people live their best life on their own terms. And so I think our first priority is those we serve, point blank, right? And at Central Maryland here, we continue to really dig deeply in community. So where they live, in Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, all throughout our region, by listening to what they want and need, which is somewhat different than some organizations, right? We listen to what they see as opportunities and challenges. And also we help them meet the needs like housing, food insecurity, workforce development, right? Family stability and support like childcare, as I mentioned earlier, and education equity, again, to help them succeed on their terms. So important to us.
Yeah, it's interesting. I break it down. I look at it a little bit more simpler than many people, but I look at housing, health, and education as 3 main stalwarts of a program. And you do such a great sort of work. You have such an amazing approach in all of those. We talk about preventing homelessness. We talk about rapidly rehousing those who have lost their homes. You're involved with that. Let's break it down. Let's talk about housing, how your organization helps those people to even help reduce rent costs and waive security deposits and things like that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we did even more than in the past when the pandemic hit was get deeply involved in eviction prevention. We've always been focused a lot on this space of affordable housing, making sure that people understood exactly what they needed to enter into secure housing. But in our state, there were over 80,000 individuals slash families that would really be in harm's way relative to eviction when the pandemic hit. So we were asked by the feds, by various county executives, our mayor here in Baltimore City, and other partners to come up with a way to prevent evictions in a much more rapid pace. So long and short of it is we were given federal dollars, work with the local partners, and over the course of 2.5 years or so, we were able to spend down about $100+ million in eviction prevention funds through the ARPA dollars and the CARES Act dollars, and be able to actually prevent over 15,000 households from facing eviction in Central Maryland, because we really were focused like a laser on how do we create an innovative approach that hasn't really been done before in our region. It was a landlord facing versus a tenant case by case facing approach that really helped a lot of people. And it really made us feel like part of our work is providing what's needed, right? Where it's needed. And this was really clear to us. We did a lot of work in this space prior to this, but never at this scale. So going forward, our mindset is a little different because the needs are such that it requires a heavy lifting effort. And we're really working carefully with our partners to do that even now.
Yeah, you've done a great job, of course. You do have federal funding. There is some state and local and funding as well, but you also take donations. And when we think about it and we talk about health, one thing that's very important to someone's health is food. And of course,
Yes.
distributing food in the right way and making sure families get meals that are packed with good proteins and things like that, where they can, be strong people. And you've done such an amazing job in your community with that as well. Let's talk about sort of food and health and what you think about in terms of being the CEO and how you help the people in the community in that regard.
Yeah, I'm really proud of this effort. We work with so many community partners like the Maryland Food Bank and just boatload of organizations, City of Refuge, a lot of local on the ground communities, First Fruits Farms. And our real job is serving as a convener, a collaborator, and sort of a catalyst of change in our community. And we have really done, I think, a really good job trying to make sure we understand where the needs are in Central Maryland, the pockets where the needs are greatest, where the food insecurity is highest, and where the index for wealth is not there, right? So really try to understand that we're working with school systems, we're working with community centers, churches, a whole web of individuals who care deeply about the folks that live right there in their backyard. And how do we set up delivery systems working with these various food banks and other partners and farms to really make sure that there's a distribution network that's effective, efficient, that people are aware of where they should show up and what's expected of them. So millions and millions of pounds of food over the last decade has been coordinated through all these partners, through the facilitation, through the coordination and back-end work of United Way of Central Maryland. Really, really happy about that. But the work never stops, right?
Never stops.
There's
You're
a
right, of
saying
course.
that the poor, the poverty-stricken, you'll always have with you. And there's a need for an organization like ours and our partners to be ready, to be a backstop, to be able to meet and anticipate, and in some ways predict, the needs that will surface when a bridge collapse happens, like it did recently in March here in the Baltimore area, to be able to predict, having the ability to stand up a fund, building the bridge fund. And so it's really helpful because we can use this fund to anticipate there will be transportation supports that are needed. There will be issues around eviction prevention. There'll be food insecurity needs because of those directly impacted by the bridge collapse here in Baltimore. So a part of our really sort of, I think strengths, one of our real solid, incredible strengths is we're on the ground. We're listening carefully to needs. We're really gathering data from so many different partners in our community so that we can be in front of the issues that surface, that we can really drive change in a very meaningful, efficient manner.
Yeah, I love that. And of course, you mentioned being in front of, and that's really important. That's how you've built your career, and that's what you look at doing at your organization. You want to be in front of the curve, not behind it. And one area that you're very in front of the curve is education. And of course, in some districts, even in your district in the region, upwards of 30, 40, even 50% of the students don't graduate from high school. So we've got a big sort of chasm there of people not graduating. And you've stepped in, your organization has stepped in with educational programs that really put students on the right track to earn a diploma, which is so important these days. And of course, help them achieve their dreams by starting there and then moving forward. So let's talk about some of the education initiatives that you do and some of the ways you think about how important it is to educate students.
Yeah, education really is the key, as you just described, Andy. It all starts there. And so we've developed equitable education opportunities, to your point, really for students through our programs like Young Men United. This program is designed for 10th graders through high school into college or into the workforce, whether it's 2-year, 4-year college or directly to the workforce. But it's really designed to provide a wraparound of supports. It's multi-generational. So the students receive support, scholarship, mentorship, college prep, career readiness, internships, all those supports, civic engagement, but it's really also designed to really help their families. Something as small as $250 can help a student go from sophomore year to junior year to pay for a book or a set of things that they need to move forward. Really small for a lot of people when you think about it, but that barrier, just removing that barrier for that student and their family can be a big boon. We have an On Track for Success program, which is phenomenal. It's for 4th graders through 9th graders, really giving them a chance to advance themselves in the areas of the ABCs, which is academic success, behavior, and the coursework, right? How do we, their attendance, their behavior, and the coursework, how do we make sure that each one of these hundreds of young men and women go successfully from 4th grade all the way through 9th grade with the ability to correct their attendance, to modify their behavior, to really do well in their schoolwork so that they're primed going into the sophomore year to finish those last 3 years of high school, be very, very well positioned to graduate from high school and go off to the school of their choice in the community. And we have a lot of our work that we do in community inside of what we have termed, Andy, neighborhood zones. So this is a hub of multiplied numbers of resources, tools, some of which I've named, and supports, and two of which have free childcare centers to actually serve student parents. The national graduation rate, your listeners might appreciate this, the national graduation rate for student parents for the last decade has hovered somewhere around 40%. In our programs, we have seen numbers between 70 and 90% of actual student parents, right, who are struggling to decide, do I stay home and take care of my 2-year-old, or do I go to class and try to figure out how to manage my sort of concern about, is my 2-year-old being taken care of? Because my mom, who may be 35, she has to work, right? So the idea of them coming into a school, being proficient, really, really focusing on education, going downstairs or across the hall to care for their little one during lunchtime and then go back to their class is such a value, such a need. So their activities are designed to stimulate their frontal lobes so they can literally leave from that program and go into a preschool program and be in front of their class because of all the activity that was designed to really move them and stimulate them in ways that they probably otherwise wouldn't have available to them, right? So it is all a kind of cradle to career is what we have set up, right? So the earliest age we'll take for this childcare center is 8 weeks old, Andy. So we're taking from 8 weeks up to 4 years, sometimes up to 5 years old. They transfer into preschool. Then we take them up when they get into 4th grade and then beyond, right? So it's a phenomenal pathway for the young people that we're supporting. And we're just so grateful and thankful to have this opportunity to care for these individuals.
Wow, I love it. Cradle to career. I've never heard that before. That's
That's
fantastic.
exactly right.
And yeah, I love that, Franklin. That's awesome. And of course, you've got the neighborhood zones. And when
Yes,
I'm listening to what you're saying, it sounds like you really are focused on what I'm going to call multi-generational
that is
support.
correct.
Let's get into that because you said, I'm not sure exactly how you said it, but you said students that have kids or students that have babies or, the multi-generational group. They're a very important group, right? They're people that really, with the right support, could lift themselves up and get the type of support they need, social, economic, and educational. And then their babies, their young ones, also get that generational support as well, so they have a better chance to lift themselves up, right?
That's right. And there was a November 2022 article in the New York Times that highlighted, as it relates to violence and crime in community, that highlighted that the lion's share, this is intuitive, but it's important to have verifiable data, longitudinal studies, that sort of validated that poverty-stricken communities, the number really goes up exponentially. So if you look at the poverty index versus the wealth index, and so for us, it is so important. We may not be providing actual violence work, but we're doing violence prevention work, crime prevention work, because we're putting these multiple numbers of members of a family in position, whether it's the mom or dad, or it's grandmom, grandfather, whoever's attending to that little one. We're putting them in position to be guardians that have resources, tools, access. Part of what we do is provide access and opportunity, right? That's so important. So if you can give access and opportunity, it puts the child and their parent in a position where they're actually receiving equity, right? They're receiving equity. And that is so important for us as an organization. When I came in, Andy, to this organization, one of the things that really was important to me is to prioritize equity in all of its form, growth in all of its form. And I really believe that's part and parcel of why we have really grown the way we've grown, why we have the trust levels in our community, because we have really put a big emphasis on this whole space around how do we ensure that the people we're supporting really are taken seriously and that their needs, right? Their needs are priority for us as an organization.
Yeah, that's amazing. And of course, one thing that we saw that came across our desk with what you're doing really caught our attention. We want to talk about it briefly. It's doing so much good for so many people. It's the 211 Maryland United Way helpline. And your helpline in the past year has taken over 100,000 calls. I mean, this is incredible. This is sort of a rapid response program you've put together. Let's talk about that because that's remarkable.
It really is. And we have this saying for your listeners, Andy. There are more than 211 reasons why one should call 211.
Okay, I
Health
like
and
it.
Human Services as a broad umbrella, but anything in the space of housing concerns, if you're a veteran, you have concerns there, anything related to your children and their health, if you have job transfer requests that you might have for transportation, if you want to get an Uber or Lyft ride, you're not able to afford that, call the number. We have credits made available through companies so you can get an actual subsidized lift, right? So literally over, as you said, on the average year, 150 or so thousand people will call. Just so happens that this past year, the number went up even more. And it went up, believe it or not, during the pandemic, even higher than that, right? So we are having 3X and 4X number of calls during the pandemic years, the heavy years of 2020, 21, 22. But I would just say the biggest thing that your listeners should understand is this is for everyone. So this is for someone who doesn't need a service, but's calling on behalf of someone who needs a service or a referral or a warm transfer to a service provider. So there are more than 7,000 resources. This is available 24/7, 365. The thing I would leave with your listeners around 211, regardless of where you're calling from within the country, is confidential. The call specialists on this line are trained. Many of them have master's degrees in social work. They understand the need to really be sensitive, to seek first to understand, then to be understood, the sense of empathy. So they are smart, compassionate, patient, and so many people are gratified with the support. When the average person calls Andy for one issue, I'm having a utility bill challenge. I need credits from my local utility company. They call for that one issue. By the time their call is over, 10 minutes later, 5 minutes later, whatever it is, they'll have 3, 4, 5 other needs addressed, right? So it's a phenomenal service for the community.
Wow, congratulations on that. Of course, from watching the show, we do have veteran-owned businesses on the show. We love the vets, and you have a nice veteran treatment and support part of your program as well. I want to touch on that because we have these people that have served us, really, and you're serving them by providing critical support to them as well. Let's talk about that program as well.
Yeah, we have 3 sites in our community, veteran treatment courts, and they are phenomenal because the judge makes all of the parameters. They work with some of our local partners, but mainly they're trying to give the veterans a second shot, right? Providing mentoring, coaching, skill development, helping them to really understand what is it they need to do next for their life. They've been challenged with some minor offenses, and they need really a leg up, and we offer a host of supports to them. Everything about what we do is multidimensional, multi-generational. We're even supporting some of the veterans and their family members as they go through this process of trying to rebuild, make a pivot with their life. And so it is truly a veterans treatment court. That is the name of the program, but it really is that. It is treatment. It's sometimes mental health, sometimes financial literacy, sometimes it's job skills, but it all is for the purpose of giving that particular veteran an opportunity to live their best life on their own terms.
Wow, I love it. You've done such a great job. Your team's amazing. Of course, you received a big award in 2020, maybe the largest gift in the organization's nearly 100-year history. And of course, we want to talk about entrepreneurship with you because before you came on with United Way, I mean, you held an executive leadership position at Greenpeace. We love Greenpeace, of course, and Volunteers of America. You received your, bachelor's degree from Howard and your master's degree from Mendoza College of Business at the University of Notre Dame. And of course, people are listening to the interview and they want to know a little bit about entrepreneurship from you because you've grown well, you've done well, you're leading this organization with a great team. Before we talk about entrepreneurship, though, I want you to talk about your team over there because the team is the whole thing and the people you have working there are incredible. So I'll give you a chance to give them a big shout out because they're doing an amazing job.
They always say there's no I in team, and that's really true. We do really work well together. Part of the secret sauce, I believe, is we intentionally recruit and onboard based upon people's skill set, based upon what do they bring to the table and how does that compare with others on the team. So we don't want to have all people who are type A's, right? And we don't want to have people with similar lived experience, with similar backgrounds. This whole space of diversity is huge for us. I mean, something that, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, has been important to me from the very beginning of my tenure is a commitment to equity and inclusion with an initial focus on diversity. I mean, in fact, one of the things that I would just share with your listeners, the staff has expanded while also becoming more diverse to actually reflect the community that United Way of Central Maryland supports. So as a result of these efforts, United Way of Central Maryland staff, and this is so powerful, has actually become majority BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, for 3 years in a row. It moved from 22% in 2017 to 65% this year. Similarly, our governing board's diversity has increased from 18% in 2017 to 44% today. So I believe that modeling and promoting equity, diversity, and inclusion is not just a moral and ethical imperative, or not just the right thing to do, but it's a business imperative, and it's vital to an organization's long-term success. And I really do believe that that is part of why we have become so wildly successful, because we've led in this space. And I think it's really made a difference in terms of attracting additional donors, deepening the understanding of the need in community by longstanding donors, but also making sure the partners are becoming more integrated in the work we do in community.
Yeah, you do a great job. Let's talk to the entrepreneurs watching the show, Franklyn. Maybe there's some younger entrepreneurs watching the show. They're freezing in the frame. Maybe they're freaking out a little bit. They've got a business. They have a tough decision. Maybe they don't know what to do. Maybe they're thinking about quitting. Maybe you could give some of that Franklyn Baker sort of motivation, the idea of what it takes to keep on pushing when times get tough.
Yeah, and you've heard that saying, right? That when difficult times come, the people who really get the fact that you need to fight, they step up and fight harder, and they dig in and they get more involved in the detail. The devil is always in the detail, right? So any business, if it's going to be successful, it can't just be high level. You have to really master the details. One of the things they taught me at University of Notre Dame in their business school is this sense of mastery of detail, right? So business mind, servant heart. So I think for me, my path to work and to leadership, particularly in the nonprofit space, yes, I've been doing it for about 30 years. I know people tell me I look fairly young, but I don't know, maybe it's the lotion or something.
Sure it is.
But I've been doing it for 30 years. But it really began with building community. And it's all about building that community, pouring a foundation of organizational culture. Whatever business you're trying to create, and you're bringing on a consultant here or a team member there in the beginning part, it's how do you actually build a culture that can lead to cultivating and in many cases building the impact an organization can have on the communities that it serves. And I say this often, but it's so true. Peter Drucker says, and we've heard this a million times, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Right. And so Stephen M.R. Covey says in his book, Speed of Trust, that when trust levels are high, this is very important for an entrepreneur, when trust levels are high, businesses are optimally efficient. When trust levels are low, bureaucracy and covering your rear end cause things to move at a snail's pace. So as an entrepreneur, you have to instill, particularly the beginning elements of your company, you have to instill this sense of trust amongst your colleagues, amongst those who may be working part-time because that's all you can afford, or working as a consultant to handle part of your business, maybe the finances or any part of your back office, making sure that you center levels of trust, and then mastery of the detail. Don't take for granted spreadsheet is correct without really reviewing it and getting a second set of eyes to look at it. I was just talking with one of my mentees right before our discussion here today, Andy. He was saying to me that when he first began his business, he didn't really understand the importance of knowing the details of his spreadsheets and knowing the detail of the outcome of what the numbers will suggest for cash flow and projections, right? In that particular space, even if you're not a math person, it's really important to gain some level of mastery of that space as a new budding entrepreneur, because it only will help you as things start to grow and spinning out of good control in a sense of having lots of business come your way. But when that comes, like for us, going from a $25 million organization some years ago to now nearly $100 million in revenue, that makes a big difference when you gain mastery at the smallest level at the very beginning. And then when things get more complex and you're managing risk and you're trying to understand what we need to do to mitigate this particular risk, you're in a better position because you've mastered some earlier things when you first began your journey.
Wow. I'm going to bring you back on the show. I'm going to do an hour. I'm going to call it the 60-minute MBA with Franklyn Baker. I mean, that's fantastic. And for the people watching the show, rewind what Franklyn just said. There's some real true gems there. Franklyn, this is fantastic. I know you've got a lot of meetings today. I'm very lucky and blessed to have, gotten your time for 30, 35 minutes today. I know you're so tight, doing so much great work at the Central Maryland United Way and leading the pack. Your team's fantastic. I want to thank you so much for coming on the .com Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series today.
Yeah, and thank you so much. All I would say as the last comment is, Andy, the work we do here at United of Central Maryland is much bigger than any one of us individually. It does really require deep humility and a sincere concern for the community. We don't do this because we're making $50 million a year individually, as staff members. We do this because of the change you're making in people's lives. And that's really why people are drawn generally to this space. And that's why I've been doing it for the time I have, because I love helping people to get to that next level in their life. And when you have that as a central focus, everything else falls in place.